Welcome back to the news at 10. One common feature during festive seasons like this is lots of food and drinks. From boiled to fried, grilled to roasted, well-garnished food is served at most social gatherings. Alcoholic and non-alcoholic beverages are also not in short supply. But how can you navigate this season without overindulging? Our correspondent Yomi Otaigbe tells us more.
Family gatherings, social functions and general fun atmosphere. That's what you find during this festive season. It's a period of giving with lots to eat and drink. If you're one of those with strict healthy eating habits, you may have to put on extra guard to overcome the temptation of overeating. Almost everywhere you go, someone is likely to offer you something to munch or drink, and you may tend to forget about your health and diet. How can we take a healthier approach to what we eat during this season and beyond while still having fun?
Eating healthy means you should still take a balanced diet and eating in moderation. A balanced diet is a diet that contains the 5 classes of food in the right proportion, adequate for the age and sex development of the individual.
There is a tendency for a number of people to eat several other food complements, which, if not also well checked or regulated or balanced, can result in a number of health consequences.
How about a platter of fruits? They are creatively designed these days in inviting colors. Also, consider moderate intake of beverages, whether alcoholic or not.
We are advised, even at this time, that we should be moderate, exercise moderation in our consumption of refined sugars and soft drinks and minerals. We should still drink a lot of water, and we really need to, cut down our alcohol intake. We should not drink excessively.
You also must learn to plan what you really want to eat. So there may be need for you to have a pre-planned orientation as to watching what you're taking in order to avoid some health hazards.
It's important to eat nutritious food. This is not to say you cannot allow yourself to indulge a little. The watchword is moderation. Yomi Otaigbe reporting for Channels Television News.
The year 2015 can be described as a year of combined global efforts against terrorism and extremism. From the war in Syria to the activities of the Islamic State to the Boko Haram attacks in northeast Nigeria, leaders brainstormed on how to make the world a safer place. Our Foreign Affairs correspondent, Amarachi Ubani, reports.
2015 has been a year of promises and deadlines made in the fight against terror, especially in Nigeria's northeast, where the activities of Boko Haram extended to neighboring Cameroon, Niger, and Chad. A joint military task force was formed to reclaim territories overrun by the group and restore normalcy as much as possible. But it seemed the harder the military fought, the more the group held on. Shortly before the presidential elections this year, former President Goodluck Jonathan gave the military 6 weeks to quash the group. It seemed an impossible task at first, but one which gradually began to yield results. International cooperation in the fight against insurgency increased. Perhaps the change of government renewed the resolve that Boko Haram must be stopped.
It's a very difficult enemy to fight, and it's a very difficult war to fight, but it can be fought. And what's needed, I think, is higher levels of training for soldiers in the field.
And with every foreign trip made by the president, were renewed calls for international help in fighting the homegrown insurgency.
Our continent is currently bedeviled by the evils of terrorism, insurgency, poverty, youth unemployment, and underdevelopment.
We had intense discussions about this, what his plans were, what he hoped to do, so that we could take a hard look at ways that we could help him as he tries to ramp up even more against Boko Haram.
Boko Haram was, however, a microcosm of an even bigger problem. The rise of the Islamic State, better known to many countries in the West as Daesh.
Religion has become a major motivation for terrorism. In the last century, it was separatist movement fighting for one cause or the other, whether Tamil Tigers in Sri Lanka, Maoist rebel in Nepal, or leftist guerrilla in Colombia.
Analysts say the civil war in Syria provided the necessary environment for the militants to consolidate on their stronghold. The fear that IS militants could penetrate the US and Europe intensified global action against the group. While the US led a joint coalition in Iraq, Russia decided to go solo in Syria, launching airstrikes on supposed militant targets in major towns and cities. The Syrian government said Russia had made more progress than any coalition put together to fight the terrorist group. The fallout of the war is the overwhelming migrant crisis that Europe is currently battling with. Thousands fleeing the fighting are making treacherous journeys across the seas to a continent not quite ready to receive them. And with most countries such as Serbia and Croatia shutting their borders and building barricades, Germany has become a destination point, with the pronouncement of Chancellor Angela Merkel that her country could take in as much as 700,000 asylum seekers and refugees, urging the German people to accept them into their communities. The attacks in Paris, from Charlie Hebdo to the multiple attacks in November, only highlighted how desperately world leaders need to respond to the growing terror and, more importantly, to the Islamic State militants, an issue that has heated up debates and stirred controversy amongst US presidential election hopefuls. The Paris attacks forced France into the fray as it launched airstrikes against Islamic State in Syria alongside the coalition force made up of the US, Bahrain, Jordan, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates. Just last week, Saudi Arabia announced a 34-member coalition to fight terrorism, Nigeria included. While some observers question Saudi Arabia's motives, one thing is clear: terrorism remains a global problem requiring a more drastic global action. Amarachi Ubani, Channels Television News.
Well, joining me now to talk about the foreign scene in 2015 is an international affairs analyst, Dr. Femi Adegbolu. Dr. Adegbolu, good evening to you, and thank you for joining me on the news at 10.
Thank you for having me.
So listening to that report, we saw this year ISIS take over territories in Iraq and Syria and become a major threat to the West. Do you think the world underestimated this group?
Well, not really. The problem of insecurity, let's say terrorism in general, has become very dangerous now that if care is not taken, it's like a dangerous ant that perches on somebody's very delicate area. So you need a kind of tact to kill that ant, otherwise you'll be injuring yourself. So these elements are so much into us that you can hardly know who is who. And so you need some intelligence, a lot of intelligence and, tact to kind of fish them out and deal with them decisively. Otherwise, there will be so many collateral damage here and there that we also attract, humanitarian concern. And that is why it's not as if they are underestimated at all.
But then, the Boko Haram and Al-Shabaab, for instance, declared allegiance to ISIS, making it the #1 terror group in the world. Has it made this difficult to defeat either group, that's Al-Shabaab or even Boko Haram?
Well, the fact that their motivation actually is something that is so strange to ordinary people. You don't really know what the motivations are that is making them to recruit more people from almost everywhere they go to. And also you don't know the people who are financing them. So until the sources of their finances are actually, cut off from them, we may not be able to, to deal decisively with them, against them. And besides the fact that the wars in Iraq, for instance, Afghanistan, and the latest one being Syria, so has a kind of brought up a lot of insurgents here and there. And the fact that these insurgents, wherever they go, they solidarize with one another. This solidarity, even some of them without even knowing what they are going to face. For the fun of it, they join. And because they have a lot of money to throw around, from all the mayhem they perpetrate all over the world, kidnapping, for instance, seizing oil block and all these things. So they have a lot of money to play around with. So this also goes a long way in enticing some people who are not inclined towards terrorism to join them. Also, some of the failed governments we have around the globe, for instance, government abandoning their responsibilities, and these terrorists taking over the responsibility, taking care of people, meeting their needs and all this. So easily they get enticed to this terrorist group.
Dr. Adebulu, let's bring it back home. We know that the president gave the December deadline to reduce or totally eliminate the Boko Haram insurgents. So technically, do you think that the president's statements on winning the war on terrorism is actually looking like it?
Yeah, I think he's right on track. He actually said it that by December what we used to have at that time would be a thing of the past. And if you look at what we used to have then, it used to be a situation where the Boko Haram will come and invade a particular territory, seize the territory, hoist their flag, cut away women, children, and so on and so forth. That we don't have anymore. That to me seemed to be that the president has actually been able to deal with that aspect decisively. But you see, like I've always said, that is counter-terrorism that have been dealt with. But the anti-terrorism is another thing. Anti-terrorism is a situation whereby you stem the tide all together by making sure that even while they are planning, you are aware of their planning, you know the next target, you know the next thing they're going to do, and also the suicide bombers are able to be checkmated. So how do you checkmate them without ideas? How do you checkmate them without necessary gadgets that will see into them, gather intelligence to making sure that all the evil plans are nipped in the bud? So that is the aspect now I think that the government is definitely thinking about now, having won the war of counter-terrorism, having barred them from invading territory, cutting away people and all that. So what is next now is how to ultimately stop them, stop even the suicide bombers from going to detonate bombs anywhere. But that also requires a lot of ideas to be installed, all these CCTV, and people to man them. People will man them to know what they should look for, in terms of detecting the crimes before they are committed.
So apart from that, are you expecting to also see more countries cooperating to ensure that there are fewer attacks?
Oh, sure. That's been done. That's what our president has been doing since his inauguration. Going from one country to the other, getting alliances here and there. So I think we all have a common enemy to fight. And it behoves on all the countries around the globe to coordinate this effort together to making sure that insurgency is the evil of insurgency is stemmed and, if not totally eliminated.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Adebulu, for coming on the news at 10.
My pleasure to be here.
Well, it's time now for the day's business news with Adeshewa Josh.
Hello, good evening. Welcome to Business News. I am Adeshewa Josh. Financial markets across the country remain closed in commemoration of the Eid Maulud and Christmas celebrations, respectively. At the equities market, it was a 3-day trading week. The NSE All-Share Index and market capitalization appreciated by 1.26% to close the week at 26,871.24 and 9.238 trillion naira, respectively. 26 equities appreciated in price during the week. Unity Bank led the pack with 28.77%, Skybank followed with 18.7%, and eTransact with 14.7%. 27 equities appreciated in price. PZ led this category with 7.18%, Fitzin and Avon Crown lost 6.72% and 4.61% each. As Nigerians celebrate the holidays, they are concerned over the value of the naira to other international currencies. At the parallel market, traders say the dollar is selling between 257 naira to 262 naira. For the British pound, it goes between 355 naira to 370 naira. During the week, overnight lending rate at the official market eased marginally to 0.75% from 1% in the last 5 weeks after the central bank refunded cash set aside by banks to buy dollars. Traders say the impact of the refund and anticipated injection of additional cash from November budgetary allocations to states and local government also helped to reduce cost of borrowing among banks. It's the annual Boxing Day sales in London today, and the cold weather did not stop shoppers from hitting the stores on London's iconic Oxford Street. Shoppers who avoided the stores before the annual Boxing Day sales say they were pleased with the discounts, but not all shoppers embraced the much-awaited festive sales. Now, Uganda has big plans for power generation over the next 3 years. Officials say they want to boost electricity supply to power industrialization as well as for export in the region. Ugandan economy has grown by 5% a year over the last decade, supported by huge investments in the retail, banking, telecoms, and hospitality sectors. And that's Business News this hour. The News at 10 continues in a moment.
Still ahead on the news at 10, Manchester United boss Louis van Gaal hints he could quit his role as manager after Stoke City condemned his side to a 4th straight defeat. That's on Sports News. Stay with us.